Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Mirella Vitale, the Chief Marketing Officer of the Rockwool Group, and I'm here with my panel, Ayesha Al Ketbi, who's the Director of Planning and Performance Management at the Abu Dhabi Environmental Agency, Opedal, who's President and CEO of Equinor, Fiona Morgan, Chief Purpose Officer at SailGP, Patricia Bubner, who's founder and CEO at Orbillion Bio, and Dr. Valeti, who's the founder and CEO at Upside Foods. So we have a very interesting topic, so we're going to dive right into it. But we're talking about the green domino effect and how behaviors and actions of influencers, individuals, whether they're governments or corporations, can actually create this ripple effect and improve and drive sustainable development in society. But we all know that some fundamentals need to be in place before consumers can actually act. And one of these big topics that has been here over the past 2 days is the energy transition. So I'm actually going to direct my first question to you, Anas. We all know that energy transition plays a fundamental role, but it's not without challenges. There's costs, there's a need for incentives, regulation, grid connections that are missing. We've heard that a lot over the last 2 days. So from the perspectives of an energy producer, how do you assess this transformation and this transition, and what incentives are working out there?
Well, it's a big question, a difficult question, because I think when you talk about the energy transition, it moves at different paces in different parts of the world, different pace between different technologies as well. So there's not one speed for the energy transition. We are the largest energy provider to Europe. We are a Norwegian company providing Europe with a lot of energy, oil, gas, and renewables. So my perspectives are a little bit kind of European on this. But what we see is a large speed on electricity, solar, wind, both onshore and offshore, while the decarbonization of the heavy industry goes a little bit slower, like hydrogen, carbon capture and storage. So you will see there is a varying speed, and I think governments struggle finding the right balance between sustainability, energy security, and affordability that they need to do. When it comes to really what's needed now, it's stability, regulatory framework. I have to say, as both oil and gas producer and electricity producer, the regulatory framework for oil and gas is much easier, much more streamlined than the regulatory framework for renewables and low-carbon solutions. So that is what we need to get the domino effect.
The domino effect, great. But then I'm going to lead into that to Ayesha, because you spoke about policy and governments getting involved and creating those frameworks. And exactly, we're talking and we're asking individuals and organizations to change their behaviors. But what is the role of government in this? And in particular, what is it you're doing here in the UAE to drive that systemic change?
So I'll resume from where Andrew mentioned that sometimes it's difficult to implement policy, but when you do it in a comprehensive approach, it shouldn't be. So as a government, as a policymaker, we should provide a supportive environment for sustainable consumption. An example of this, in Abu Dhabi, we implemented the single-use plastic policy, which is considered the first policy of its kind on the GCC countries and in the Arab world from both approach and comprehensiveness. It is focused on regulation. It focused also on providing incentives and also running environmental campaigns. All of this was done through a public-private partnership approach, which made it much easier when it came to implementation and having everybody on board from a consumer perspective, community, from all community angles. So we started in 2022 in Abu Dhabi when we started a ban on single-use plastic bags, followed by a ban on styrofoam. That resulted in lowering more than 360 million plastic bags and also a compliance rate of more than 97% on the policy. Now, regulations without incentives cannot go smoothly. So incentives represent a powerful tool to transform behavior of people and also promote sustainable consumption. We provided, in collaboration with major retailers across Abu Dhabi, alternative for reusable bags, as well as plastic bottles return scheme. When they return, they use plastic bottles for recycling, and in exchange of that, incentives were provided in terms of vouchers, discounts, cashback, and sometimes that all resulted in increase of 2,000% increase in reusable bag usage in Abu Dhabi.
Perfect. I'm going to come back to you a little later, but I just want to jump on because we're talking about changing behaviors and driving consumer change. And we all know that sports has a real unifying impact, right? It creates movements. There's a lot of rallying around sports. So Fiona, what is it that you're doing with the sports, and what does your platform drive in order to create some kind of a movement for sustainability?
Yeah, so I'm from SailGP, which is like Formula One on the water, but our boats are powered by nature. So we very much are authentic and believe that we are sustainable kind of ambassadors and platform for the world. I think sport is a business. It's also, everyone's passionate and tribal, but it's a business. So actually, sport as a business has a huge power. It's got a growing business. It's got $1 billion business, and you have 5 billion fans. So I think sport is a great platform that can speak to people in a different way and actually bring sustainability into culture.
That's a really good point. And talking about business, Patricia, we've been talking about policies and how policies can drive, systemic change. But of course, there's also business. It's also sustainable for businesses to make money and create impact in society, also creating jobs and new ways of looking at technology. So can you tell us a little bit about how you're working also with the UAE and the MENA region to drive technology, and what is the incentive for working in the region and in other parts of the world? How do you see policy driving your business?
Great question, Mirella. And I also want to connect to what you said previously and Fiona, what you said. You said sport unifies people. You know what also unifies people? Food. We all like to share a good dinner with friends and family. So food is a business that causes right now 30% of global greenhouse gas emissions, and we can reduce that. So what we do at Orbillion is we make meat without the need to raise cattle. Real meat, independent of land, and with 90% less greenhouse gas emissions. And as you said, policy, regulatory efforts drive our ability to bring that product to all of you and to your families. And I see a unique opportunity for the GCC region, for the UAE particular, to drive food security in the region and beyond by enacting the regulatory framework and the policies that are necessary for us to really scale in the region and bring products to market rapidly, and therefore not only reduce the climate impact of the food produced, the transport of the meat produced, plus you can be an independent food producer and exporter right here in the UAE.
Thank you. Uma, over to you. We heard the MC say that about 71% of consumers believe in sustainable products, and they believe that that's the choice they should make, but only about 22% actually act on that choice. Why do you think that is? Is it affordability? Is it convenience? What can you do as a business, because you're also running a business, to drive that change in consumers?
Yeah, thank you. This is a green domino question that we're all talking about. The experiences matter. When people say they want to do something, making them move from wanting to do something to actually doing something is the experience. So having those experiences that are really magical, intense, and solving something that people want to solve, I think is a really big deal. So when you talk about sport unifying people, food unifying people, that's what we're doing at Upside Foods. It's an idea that did not even exist in the world 8 years ago. The idea that you can actually bring delicious food to the table, and in this instance, meat, where you can grow meat from cows, chickens, or pigs by using their cells, and take away the downsides of meat production, which could be harm to animals, harm to the environment, harm to our human health. So when we start talking about this and communicating clearly and saying, we're going to bring the world's safest meat to the table, we want to care about our family's health, community's health, and create an incredible economic opportunity along with it, then you're creating industries, you're creating employment, you're creating experiences people can take part in. So I think that's really the green domino effect, and it takes time. In time, we'll win. We just have to continue to be able to put these magical experiences in front of people.
Great. Anna, so I'm going to come back to you. So we said energy is the foundation because, right, all of these businesses and sports, everything needs energy to drive it. If you could pinpoint, like, the most impactful technological innovation within the energy sector, what would it be, and what would be the conditions that you need to really create a ripple effect, and why not create a wave in the market?
Oh, Right now, I think one of the key technologies that can really take energy production to the next level, make it safer and more sustainable, is AI. We have worked with digital solutions, machine learning, and now AI for many, many years. We are putting people into the center and saying, how can we use this new technology for people to make better decisions? How can we remove people away from the most serious areas, keeping them safe such that everyone working for us can come safely home every day? How can we prevent incidents to happen? And for instance, failure on machinery, but detecting potential failure before it actually happens. And we're seeing how we can optimize our business, logistics, using less fuel, fewer ships to ship out all the goods we need to run our business. But I think to really be able to scale up this is all about sharing and working together across different technology companies. For instance, the technology companies that develop AI, they have a lot of experience of that. We know how to run an energy business. And if you're combining that knowledge, you are able to kind of really drive results, bottom-end results, safety results, and more sustainable results.
Great. So Ayesha, when energy companies like Anis's are providing you all this clean energy, efficient energy, then how are you driving education and awareness in society and driving also behavioral change? Because it's, of course, we need to produce more energy, but we need to save, we need to recycle, consume less. So how do you bridge that gap?
We're bridging the gap through being closer to the community and to the society. And we've implemented in Environment Agency Abu Dhabi various initiatives to be closer to end users. In 2009, we introduced the Sustainable School Initiative, which basically focused on younger generations, teenagers, children at an early age at their school. When introduced that program, it was recognized by the United Nations Education Program, and it was a leading engagement program on the UAE level. So basically, we encourage school students to monitor their impact on sustainability, their consumption of paper, water, energy, get it recorded on an application, and they are giving a star rating, and the star rating is in exchange rewarded through incentives. We have also online applications which are available 24 hours to all the public. They're free of charge. And they basically encourage, we have Badir, which in Arabic means do it, initiate it. And it basically focuses on promoting green activities like reducing carbon, reducing waste, recycling. So you collect points on the application, and at the end you redeem the points and a partnership across Abu Dhabi. We also have other applications. We have the citizen-signed Saham, which means in Arabic, contribute to the progress of your environment. And so basically it focuses on reporting waste, categorizing waste, put the data into the application. It gets reported to Environment Agency Abu Dhabi. We extract the data, and this data is utilized by our scientists and analysts to produce regulations, policy, and strategies to foster the implementation of more of a consumer support to protect the environment.
Great. I'm going to stop you there because I want to come back to, so we've spoken about organizations, businesses, energy producers, government, but then we spoke about sports. But what about the athletes themselves? How can you use athletes to influence and drive change in society?
Yeah, athletes are really important, and they've got a big responsibility. We were talking earlier, MIT did a study about who is engaging consumers, who are they listening to? And in the 1950s, it was politicians, it was scientists. In the 2020, athletes, 55% of consumers are listening to athletes over scientists and politicians. There's a lot in there to discuss, but it just shows how powerful athletes are, but they need to use their voice for good, and they need to be educated. So at SailGP, and Morella actually is a sponsor of one of our boats at SailGP, so knows exactly what we do. We take it very seriously about how our athletes act. So we were the first sport in the world 4 years ago to have 2 trophies. So we have one for sailing, and we have one for the planet. So it's called the Impact League. And it was using behavioral science. So we know that you have to incentivize good behavior. You have to make it cool, you have to make it fun and engaging. And you have to educate people as they're doing it, because they don't know what they're doing. It's a minefield. You know, it's quite difficult sometimes to know what's more sustainable, you know, a bottle over a can, or so it's really the education piece. So we have a league where athletes get kind of audited. They get scores on their sustainability behavior, social and environmental, and there's a prize at the end. And the athletes really want to win. Morella's Danish team won in year 2, and it's as important sometimes as winning on the water. And that behavior is these athletes are then engaging our fans. They're talking to their fans about what they're doing, how they're traveling, what they're eating. And actually that makes it cool and relevant and like relatable to the fan that's just there watching a sporting event.
Thank you, Fiona. She kindly avoided saying that we came last in season 1.
And second this year, but you did win. You did win, everyone.
We did win. We had a comeback. But Patricia, so we're saying, you know, governments are doing what they need to do, energy companies are doing what they need to do, sports, athletes, influencers. So where are the barriers?
So I think for cultivated meat itself and for it to be part of that green domino effect, what we need besides the regulatory framework is really scalability, meaning having product in the market that customers can buy, having it be tasty so that consumers want to eat it. And also for us as a B2B company, we work with big food companies that bring products to the market. In general, it needs to be easy for people to have a more sustainable choice. Companies can do that by adding products like cultivated meat to their products, making the choice easy. The second important thing there is to be able to get to a price point that the customer is willing to pay. That comes with scalability, but that also comes with being able to have affordable energy costs for a manufacturing heavy company like we are. So a regional and a global scope for us to be able to scale is really important. And then secondary, really to say, how can we get that on people's plates so that it's easy, that it's tasty, that it's cost efficient for the customer to choose our product.
Thank you. So Uma, Patricia obviously has introduced the topic of cultivated meat. Cultivated meat, that's a pretty wild idea, right? So, you know, as a consumer, and I'm sure many other people in the room are saying, isn't that sort of crazy weird? And, you know, how do you convince people that it's not crazy weird, but it's actually crazy good and something we should all buy into? And, you know, you can speak to me as if I was a 12-year-old and help me get it. So how do you do that?
Look, I would say a lot of crazy things we thought were crazy are the ones that are the most fun, but also ending up saving the world, saving lives. I mean, take a few examples. I mean, we had polio killing people. The polio vaccine comes in, it saves lives. Polio is essentially eradicated. Take about heart attacks. We used to treat people with rest and saying, hopefully it'll improve with rest. But now we open up the vessel or do a heart transplant. That saves lives. Think about flying. Flying was thought of crazy. We're all here because we flew in here for the meeting. Think about cars. Think about refrigerators and making ice in a refrigerator. All these were crazy ideas. The same thing with cultivated meat. When people recognize that you can make meat directly from animal cells, so you preserve the choice of what people love, and at the same time, you're also protecting life, not just of the animal, but people around in our community, decreasing the risk of zoonotic diseases, pandemics, antibiotic resistance. The benefits just add up. So that craziness of the idea, in order to become real, has to be coupled with some phenomenal experiences. And I'll leave you with one thing. We just had the world's most followed person. I won't name that yet, but he came and tasted the meat that we were serving. We gave him 7 different types of chicken, from kebabs to salads to, you know, empanadas. And you know what he said? I don't know what I'm doing in my life. What you're doing is amazing. I will eat this for the rest of my life, twice a day, forever, and my family. Those are the magical moments that we need to create, from going from crazy weird to crazy good.
Sounds really interesting, and we will get that name from you behind the scenes. Yeah, we're going to come back. But to wrap up, I'm going to go in order of seating now, just a quick one-liner. But just tell me, you know, we have all these ideas, whether they're crazy or super serious or traditional, etc. But then how do we measure impact? How do we measure the ripple effect? How do we know that it's actually happening, this change? So how do you measure the work that you're doing in society?
I think through different tools utilized, from applications to different initiatives, offering incentives, and make it as you said, make it fun, make it more interesting to people, and always keep measuring and managing your performance and feed into your improvement plans to make a major impact to protect the environment.
Thank you. Fiona, how do you measure impact from your Impact League?
Yeah, so we measure impact of, I suppose, looking at the data of our fans, like how are we changing our fans' mindsets, that kind of behavioural science approach. But for us at SailGP, we wanted to be a pioneer in sport and kind of prove that sustainable sport is good for business and it can be a force for good. So for me, it's other sports adopting things like the Impact League, like what ripple effect can SailGP have in the bigger sports sector? And so we're looking at that data, and sports are following what we do, so that's great.
Patricia, what does success look like for you? How will you feel like, I know it's a much newer segment, so you're sort of really at the beginning of the ripple, and hopefully it will become a wave eventually, but how do you measure that?
Look, I think the measure of the impact of cultivated meat will be in the future when we don't talk about it as cultivated meat, and it will be the number of products it's in, the number of countries it's in, the number of peoples that eat it, and that is my forward-looking impact measurement. For me, it's not a question of if, but of when that happens. It's a technology that we owe the future of our generation, the future of our planet.
Great. Anna, so I'm going to be tough on you because you're the energy producer. So decarbonization, we need you, right, for decarbonization. I come from a B2B industry, and it's not so easy for us to decarbonize because the grid's not always readily available. So how do you measure impact, and how do you help this decarbonization?
That's a good question, because for an energy company, it's really about collaboration. Because producing oil and gas, we have a customer base. When we're moving into electricity, and particularly when we're moving into transportation and storage of CO2, we need new customers that need to be to afford to capture the CO2 and then actually also store it permanently. So we will see a success for us is really about we are able to increase our business outside the oil and gas, having a real energy transformation also inside the company and not only in the world. But what we need is really that the world is working together. We see that to get to net zero, get a more sustainable world, countries need to work together, companies need to work together. But actually we see now is more barriers. We see more walls than bridges being built at the moment. So it's up to now for us, business leaders and state leaders, to really go back and find a way to collaborate. That's the precondition that we move to a more sustainable world.
Thank you, that's good to hear. Uma, so this ripple effect, how are you going to measure that you are actually sort of part of activating and getting that ripple effect, that green domino effect happening in society?
I think we can look back to the history of the last 8 years of the ripple effect of just the idea being seeded into the world, to 200 companies being formed, to regulatory approvals coming from 3 major countries. That's what we've had. So now looking at the panelists, or if I see what Ayesha is looking for, she's looking to make sure there's food safety, food security. Of course, you can say we'll build one more vertical farm, but what if there is some kind of swine flu, bovine, avian flu spread? You might have to say, I don't have an option. Impact is measured by measuring adoption. So if government adopts policies to make hedges and have other supply of the same food without taking the choice away from people, that's adoption as an impact. If I look at Fiona's analogy of sports people, athletes coming out and saying, we want great food, safest food. Why do we need to have E. coli? Why do we need to have salmonella poisoning? I want to be able to adopt this and have an option for my kids. That's amazing. If Anders comes and says, look, you cannot plug a cow to make meat into an outlet, but we can plug an entire cultivated meat facility into any energy source you have, wind, solar, power. You can just literally plug in, and we can basically make a meat production carbon neutral, carbon negative. Adoption, that's what Impact's all about.
Great, so we've just about wrapped up. Thank you so much for being so inspiring. Hopefully you've inspired the audience to go out and start, whether you're an organization, a government, a sports person, or an individual. Everybody can be part of this Green Domino impact, and also collaboration and partnership. This is a very diverse panel, but thank you for coming together and making this such an interesting conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mirella.